ready for a podcast?
Yeah.
I know Tonks and Remus are because they've already started barking.
Yeah, I just fed them.
Hello and welcome to Learning the Law, a podcast about all things legal with a focus on current events where we try to teach you things in an hour. My name is Ashley, aka Phoenix Nymphy, and my co-host, who is the man of the hour, my husband, Ron. This podcast is purely educational and should not be taken as legal advice. Podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. This podcast is based on our interpretation of relevant law, and any opinions expressed are the opinions of the individual or individuals making them and do not reflect the opinions of any firm, company, or other individuals. Ron is a licensed practicing attorney in the state of California.
Yes, I am, and have been since 1999.
We are now officially on Patreon, so please consider supporting the podcast through there. You can find it on patreon.com/learningthelaw. If you would like to sponsor the podcast, please email us at twolazydogsmedia@gmail.com. And for more content from us, please check Sunday evenings on TikTok on my TikTok channel at Phoenix Nymphy, where we go live to discuss other things that have happened in the week, including just reading the newspaper and discussing just having our thoughts and opinions on what we've read in the newspaper. So last week we canceled because I was tired, and yesterday Ron was sick. So we're here today and we are discussing the Earn It Act. But before we go in depth into this, because this is a very convoluted and confusing and understandable thing, I would like to say one thing about what came out today. Removing trans children from a home that allows them to transition and allows them to be themselves and allows them to explore themselves and understand themselves is abuse. It's not the opposite. You're not saving them from abuse. And Governor Greg Abbott and the Texas Congress, state, whatever, are wrong in in the laws that they have just put into place. And every parent, every family who has a transgendered family member or child should be very scared right now and should be very concerned and need to make sure to vote him out and get all of the support you can through ACLU, through any local, churches that support you, like the Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple. Please help yourselves with this. Just like with women, this is horrendous and this is awful, and it is setting us backwards so many years. This is wrong. And they are abusing a law that they already have, and they claim that it is abuse to have a transgender child. And that's not. That's the complete opposite of abuse, because you have parents who support their children and love their children for who they are. And that is all a child can ask.
I've got nothing to add to that.
So this week we're talking about the Earn It Act, and this might be more than one podcast. We might be able to get through it in one podcast, though. But longtime listener, I should say longtime listener. We've only been on for a year, but a listener nonetheless. Crymsonpleasure sent this to me and was like, "I don't understand this," and I said, "Okay, well, we will look it up and see if we can explain it." And honestly, we don't fully understand it either. It's a very confusing piece of legislature that they're trying to push through. And the ones who are pushing it through are the first person who brought it to the Senate is Lindsey Graham. Sylvia Garcia and Lindsey Graham are the two. Sylvia Garcia is of the House of Representatives, and Lindsey Graham is the senator who support this. And there's another list of, GOP Republican senators in the House that support this. So that right there, and I know that is a horrible knee-jerk reaction, but anything that Lindsey Graham brings to the plate to me is not going to be good. So I already went into this, reading this with trepidation, because I was like, all right, it's Lindsey Graham. He is a self-hating homophobe. So I'm very curious I was very, very curious on what it was. And my thoughts on the Earn It Act is reading through this. So according to Wikipedia, I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs of Wikipedia. Actually, no, I'm going to read you the events. I'm going to read you the paragraph of the events leading to the Earn It Act, because that I think is the most important thing about this. And you'll understand why. The 2016 United States presidential election drew concerns about possible Russian interference in the elections. In the wake of various allegations, the U.S. government, then with a Republican leadership, started questioning the role of the big tech companies, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook, which is now Meta, as well as other social media sites like Twitter, and moderating content. They faced increased pressure to address misinformation, hate, and violent content on their sites. Social media sites took steps to moderate content, and under their Section 230 allowance, blocked accounts they had deemed to violate their terms of service, most of which had come out of alt and far-right groups. This led Republican lawmakers to claim that these sites were using Section 230 immunity to create bias. Senator Ted Cruz argued that Section 230 should only apply to providers that are politically neutral. I hate to say this, but there is no way you're going to have a neutral person in any way, shape, or form. Just putting that out there. You can try to be as unbiased as you can be, but you're not going to have politically neutral people. Anyway, suggesting that a provider should be considered to be a liable publisher or speaker of user content if they pick and choose what gets published or spoke. Senator Josh Hawley alleged that Section 230 immunity was a sweetheart deal between big tech and big government. So what does that mean? So essentially it means that when all of the misinformation and stuff that was coming out from QAnon started getting removed for the content and the lies and the misinformation, the problem is it affected GOP people that were, in the seat. Like it affects them because it's alt far right conspiracy theories that they were removing. And so they feel, okay, well,
Sorry.
that was your belly. Thanks for showing me your belly.
Oh, you're welcome.
So first of all, they feel that these social media sites are liberal, and it is a F the Democrats mentality, first and foremost. So that is what has brought the Earn It Act to play. That's why it is here, because it is literally a F Democrats, because they think big tech are democratic. And the thing is, they're not really.
No, Zuckerberg's gone on saying that how much he admires Trump.
Yeah. Bezos is the richest dude in the world. Do you really think if he were Democratic, he would have as much money as he had? No, he would actually pay his workers a decent wage and not treat them like crap. I'm sorry. He's he's for capitalism, which is not a really liberal idea. It's a right Republican ideology. And he is all for What's the thing that Bernie Sanders said? It's not that he hates capitalism. He wants, what does he call it? Regulated capitalism. Bezos doesn't want regulated capitalism because that would mean he would need to pay taxes. And he hasn't paid taxes in 5 years?
It's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's not the only one.
Yeah. But regardless, that section right there already kind of puts a cloud over this act. So that's why. So I feel like that's important to know the history of this act for when we get into what the act is saying that it's doing, allegedly doing. It was introduced in 2020 and it was reintroduced after removing a lot of stuff and changing a lot of stuff. It was reintroduced in February of this year.
Yep.
I think that kind of sums up its history.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't had an extensive history. It's only been around for 2 or 3 years.
Yes. And like I said, the reason why it's come up is because, I mean, basically Trump got banned from Twitter and people didn't like it. I know that's my opinion, but that's kind of why they brought that up, because their thoughts are that we'll go with Twitter. We'll stick to Twitter just
as an example.
Yeah, we'll stick with Twitter. No, let's actually go with TikTok because its moderation is the worst. No, we'll go back to Twitter because Twitter is the one who's removed like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump, and a bunch of other very extremist people. And they've removed people from the other side as well, but there's not a lot of extremists on the left side, like conspiracy wise, because they're not the one, because the left doesn't really believe in conspiracies. So you have a section, but it's a lot smaller than what you have in the GOP right now. So Twitter, Twitter put in new moderation to kind of combat misinformation. A lot of them to try to combat misinformation because it causes issues. Like it is, and it's definitely. I mean, it was proven that it was Russian interference, and Russia is definitely coming back again with the stuff in Ukraine to do it all over again. So it's definitely a problem that needs to be dealt with.
And I'm going to add, it's not like we don't interfere with other countries' elections.
Right. It is. So moderation is important. And removing the reason why Trump was removed is because he incited a riot. He incited a riot with his words. And so what they want to do is hold, which I find very weird, but the way I'm understanding it is they want to hold Twitter accountable for what anybody on their platform says. So they want to hold Twitter accountable for allowing Trump to say those things. And that doesn't make sense to me because they didn't say it. Trump said it. And Trump was removed, so they did the thing. And so they're claiming it under proactivity, right? They're saying this is essentially trying to set up a framework to be proactive. But the problem is when you have that kind of thing, you can't really be proactive. You have to wait and let those people show themselves. But they're doing a lot of this under the guise of child sexual exploitation and child pornography. And like the words that they use at the beginning of this act is, this is to establish a national commission on online child sexual exploitation prevention and for other purposes. But what are those other purposes? They don't name those other purposes. And that's why I have a problem with this act, because this sets up a framework for us to abuse it and abuse this system.
It does. And most people reading this will pass over the other purposes. They'll just see that it's about preventing, and I'm just going to call it child pornography because that's what it was called
Yeah.
previously. They just want to stop child porn. And who doesn't want to stop child porn?
Right.
Except for, Jeffrey Epstein and his friends.
Trump.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to stop it? So everyone's going to go, oh, that sounds like that's an okay thing.
Yeah. It's to me, it's the same thing that Greg Abbott is doing with the removing trans kids from their parents based off of abuse, because the, opinion of the attorney general is that it's abuse to allow your kid to take,
testosterone,
the HRT. Yeah. Allow your kid to go through HRT and stuff. That's child abuse when it's not. That's not what constitutes abuse. That's not abuse. You're not forcing your kid to take it. And so the thing is, like, predators, when it comes to that, you can try to be proactive. Just like I've been sexually assaulted 3 times in my life. I did everything I was supposed to do to not be sexually assaulted. And I was still assaulted, not once, not twice, but 3 times. A predator is going to prey upon you regardless of how proactive you are to avoid it. So you can't really be proactive. You can try to be proactive, but you have to kind of let them show themselves so you can catch them, because they're very good at hiding.
Right.
Like, how many times have there been situations where people are caught with child pornography on their computer because they got an email from someone who sent it to them? They didn't know what it was. They trusted them. They opened it up and it's like, oh, shit, that's not cool. Not okay with that. And then the cops are like, boom, got you. Right? Like, there's a lot of stories where the cops have set people up to catch the child pornography on their systems anywhere. And were they actually child predators, or was it just the cops being a little too aggressive? Right? In some instances, yes, they were being proactive, but in some instances, it's a little aggressive. And I'm not saying we don't want child pornography to exist. We want it to not exist. We want exploitation to go away. We want sex trafficking is huge in Atlanta because of the fact that it is the busiest airport in the world. So, or one of the biggest airports in the world, like busiest airports in the world. So, yes, that's a problem. Yes, we need to actively work on stopping it. But I don't think this is the way to do it.
Well,
so let's go through it.
Okay. And bring up the text here. The first section is just the title. The second section is a couple definitions. That's just generic talk. It's part of every
Earn It
act.
So it's called the Earn It Act because it stands for Eliminating Abusive and Rampant Neglect of Interactive Technologies Act of 2020.
Right.
That's why it's called the Earn It Act.
So as you can see there's nothing about child pornography in the title.
Nope.
It's something about the interactive technologies, i.e. social media platforms.
Yes.
That's what that means. Being abusive and neglectful.
Yes.
And so they're going to set up this commission. And they're going to call the commission the National Commission on Online Child Sexual Exploitation Prevention. And so they're going to set up this committee, and it's going to be the National Committee on Online Child Sexual Exploitation Prevention. Sounds really good. The composition, no, you're going to have 19 members. And your three top members are going to be the Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security, and the chairman of the Federal Trade Commission.
The FTC.
Yes. Now, the question, Attorney General, child porn. Okay, I can see that person being on the committee. Secretary of Homeland Security?
For child sex trafficking? Yeah. Homeland Security? Yeah.
It to me that's negligible.
Okay.
What does Homeland Security have to do with child porn?
Well,
It's supposed to be the security of the nation.
They changed it from child porn to sexual exploitation to cover not just porn, but also trafficking and stuff like that.
And once again, you can make a connection between sex trafficking and national security.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like they're spies. It's not like they are infiltrating industrial espionage, things that Homeland Security is supposed to do.
Gotcha.
The Attorney General by himself should be able, they're the head of the FBI, DOJ, should be able to combat sex trafficking all by themselves if they would just have the fortitude to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then your third person, chairman of the FTC. What?
I want to know why the Federal Trade Commission, who needs to be on this, because they obviously are not. They're very biased because they. Why do you need the federal? Why do you need the FTC to be involved?
The FTC is involved solely because social media platforms come under its purview.
But
it is here so they can try and regulate social media platforms.
Yeah.
Not stop child pornography. It's not like there's a legal trade of child porn or sex trafficking that the Federal Trade Commission would regulate.
Right, because it's all illegal.
Right.
So there's no reason for them to be involved.
No. Other than they want to regulate
the internet.
Social media platforms.
They want to regulate the internet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which means, regulating the internet is what China does, what Russia does.
North Korea.
It's what authoritarian governments do.
Correct.
Fascist governments.
Fascist and those that purport to be communist, they both do it. Yeah, I will offer you that there isn't a communist country on this planet.
No. They don't.
And for those of you who think I'm crazy in saying that, please point out to me one country that says they're communist where the workers actually control everything.
Right.
Because that's communism.
Yeah.
Okay, the rest of this committee, you got 16 other members of this committee. So it makes it look as if there's going to be some kind of free form of ideas and debate. You get 4 members that are nominated by the head of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
You get 4 members that are nominated by the minority leader of the Senate, 4 members that are nominated by the Speaker of the House, and then 4 members nominated by the House Minority Leader. So it sounds like it's all equal. You're going to have 8 from one party and 8 from another party.
Yeah.
But your the 3 that are always there, the Attorney General, the Homeland Security, and the Chairman, are always going to be your deciding votes.
Right.
And they're always going to be the people that are in power of the White House at the time.
So really having all these extra people on the committee isn't going to help. Isn't really going to
sham. It's a show. It's not going to do anything because these 3 people, because you just need a majority vote.
Yeah.
These 3 people are going to decide everything because anything else is going to be on party lines 8-8.
Right.
So, and they go through some qualifications, which is, another sham.
Right.
Then you get down to the duties of the commission in section 4. And here's what sticks out to me. In section 4, section A, subsection 1, subsection B, subsection I. Okay, you gotta love the legalese with these. There's a requirement for alternative best practices. And they are going to be required to develop best practices for the social media platforms and the internet in general to stop this, quote, child porn, unquote. Okay. I will tell you right now, the number one best practice, they're going to want the government to have backdoor into encryption technologies.
Which, I mean, that's evident based off of the Apple lawsuit.
They've wanted it for years.
Yeah.
Not only is it a way to find child porn, which it is, it's also a way to find political enemies. It's also a way to find information that would normally require a warrant. Now you're going to say, well, they can get a warrant for that. They could get a warrant for that. But you see how exploitive no-knock warrants are.
Yeah. And how many people lose their lives who shouldn't due to no-knock warrants. Like,
right.
They are things that should not exist.
You can, and I'm going to say this, being in the legal community, you can always find a judge that will sign off on your warrant.
Yeah.
It may not be the judge that's on duty at the time. You just have to wait.
Yeah.
There's always a judge that will rubber stamp anything law enforcement wants. And the Supreme Court, this is off the top of my head, I can't remember the case, has already said that you only need a good faith effort or a good faith belief in a warrant in order for it to be valid. So when you fill out the warrant and you say this guy has 20 million kilos of drugs,
you don't have to be accurate.
You don't have to be accurate. It doesn't even have to be true. You just have to have a good faith belief that whoever your confidential informant is, who you don't have to identify, is telling you the truth. Now, I don't have to tell you, how much people lie on these things.
Right.
So it's only going to be a matter of, if this went through, they're going to say, this guy has child porn on his computer. I need a warrant. Use the back door to get into the system and find out anything that they want.
Do you think they should be allowed access to that back door, but not specifically in this case, like due to this law? But do you think that there should be the ability to get into that back door.
No.
Wow. Okay. I mean, we have established that we have a right to privacy.
It's an implied right.
We have an implied right to privacy, which could be removed with this act and other things that are that are slowly chipping away at Roe v. Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood.
Right. As we previously discussed.
Which we have previously discussed. Do I think that we could use better moderation for the internet? Abso-freaking-lutely. Do I think this is the right way of going it? No. What I think needs to happen is you need to go to the people who use those platforms and talk to those people. And I'm not talking about the people who run the platforms. I'm talking about us. And do you want to go? I know you don't want to go through and listen to millions of users, but those are the ones you're going to get that information from. I mean, for example, TikTok. I love and hate TikTok. We got our start on TikTok, but like it actively suppresses certain content, and promotes other content based off of race. And I can prove that. I have been able to prove that as a white person, who regularly supports Black content creators. Whenever I promote other content creators who are not my race, it gets suppressed, or it doesn't get released at all. And anything that is political in nature, which is our content, gets frozen for a while and doesn't get released immediately. But my videos where I'm not really doing anything and I'm just talking or showing whatever, they don't get held. They don't get held. The videos where like I get high and do baked reactions don't get held. And I just like duet other people's videos and just watch them and laugh at them. Those don't get held because there's nothing really divisive in those videos. So platforms already actively either suppress or moderate or proactively moderate their content. However, platforms like TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all of them, if you have enough people who report you, there's no way to go, hey, this is just a mass reporting issue. You need to unban me or undo any of that. If we allow this type of framework to go through, it's going to make the mass reporting a lot more common and a lot harder to reverse it.
Right. And why do we feel this way? Because let's take a look at the requirements or the consideration aspects of why they need best practices. The number one consideration for what needs a best practice is, as can be seen, the size, type of product, and business model of a provider of an interactive computer service. So the bigger the social media platform, the more it needs to be regulated by this committee.
Which, as a leftist, yeah, the bigger stuff is, the more it needs to be regulated, but we don't regulate. Like Amazon needs to be regulated. Netflix needs to be regulated. They're not.
No, and once again, they're not interactive computer service, so this will not affect them.
Right. This affects only interactive stuff.
Right.
Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch.
I was going to say, what's the
Pornhub?
Pornhub.
It's interactive. Yeah.
Porn,
and
Pornhub.
All of this, if you think
Tinder.
about it, yes, Tinder, all of those dating apps, and it's going to regulate more than just your big social media platforms. It will regulate Parler as well.
Yeah, Parler.
But it won't, because Parler isn't as big as Twitter, and Twitter is apparently, pushing the liberal agenda. But suffice it, all that said, it doesn't take into place freedom of speech, which is our God-given right. Right. Are there consequences to that freedom of speech? Yes, there are. And if that means that platform removes you from their platform due to your speech, they have every right to do that. They have the right to do that.
You have freedom of speech, as we went through our First Amendment
series. It was a series. Yes.
It only matters when there's government regulation.
Yeah.
You don't have a freedom of speech on Facebook right now, or Twitter, or TikTok, because there is no government regulation.
But if you have the government bring it in, could you not then argue, well, this is my freedom of speech. I should have the ability to say this stuff on Twitter.
You wouldn't be able to regulate or ban Marjorie Taylor Greene and her lies.
Yeah. You would be able, you would allow them. And the thing is, Facebook doesn't actually do a decent job of suppressing misinformation at all.
No. I would go so far as, in my opinion, they actually promote it.
Yeah, they do. In fact, what's that guy's name is Dan something, but he's like the CEO who cut his thing in half and bumped everybody in his business up to $70,000 a year, their salary. He posted a thing showing how for $15 he could have promoted. So Facebook said there's no citations in this, right? They put their little misinformation disclaimer in there, right? In his Facebook post, and then you can boost with $15 as the secondary thing, because that's automatic when you have a business account. It's you can always promote your content. Instagram does the same thing, because I have a business Instagram account, and it's always boost your post for so much money. But it gives the warning of there's no citation, so they don't actually care. As long as you give them that money, your stuff will still be boosted.
Right.
Whether or not it's misleading. They may tell you it's misleading, but a QAnon person doesn't care.
That is unregulated capitalism at its finest.
That is unregulated capitalism. That is what needs to be regulated. That is what needs to be regulated. Not allowing people to, because our laws for the internet definitely need to catch up to today. We don't have good laws in place to protect users, okay? Especially when you are stalked, because the local cops don't take it serious unless there's a real threat, right? For example, I was stalked. They were calling Ron's phone number and harassing Ron while I was live streaming. Every time I live streamed, they would call and harass Ron. They would also follow and and unveil personal information like my address, my phone numbers, my my family member names. Like it was a problem. And I went to the local PD. They don't have a cyber unit here in the city we live in. They're like, you have to go to the FBI. Unless they threaten you, we can't do anything. And I'm sorry, but when you're putting people's personal information like that out there and like harassing them and attacking them like that is a threat, in my opinion. Even though it's not a physical threat, you're still putting me in harm's way. You're still putting people in harm's way. And there's no laws, really, other than federal ones, that combat that. We had to contact the FBI to get it to stop. And it stopped because we contacted the FBI. But those are problems that I see constantly with my girls in our community girl streamers. Because women and marginalized communities are the ones that are doxxed and stalked the most. And we do need laws that are going to help us and support us and keep us safe. Yeah. But we need laws that are not going to be easily abused. I think I pretty much said, so basically my point is that we do need to regulate it. And yes, it would be nice to see more serious, laws coming out to discuss this. But with the turnover of the FTC, right? The FTC got rid of, I always get a little confused. What did they,
net neutrality?
Net neutrality. Yeah. With, we no longer have net neutrality. So the government already kind of screwed us on the pooch with that one, because that just benefits the capitalism, right? That benefits the people who own the ISPs, because now they can slow stuff down.
For those that can't or won't pay for it.
That can't or won't pay for more, right? So, and that I don't think is okay. I don't think that's right. I think, already we're here. We're only allowed to get Spectrum. That's it. That's all that's available in our area. We don't even get to choose between the three major ones, right? Comcast, Spectrum, and AT&T. We don't get a choice. Nobody gets a choice, because depending on what area you live in is where they're going to be. And the internet is a utility right now. You need to be able to have access to the internet.
Congress has granted monopoly areas to companies.
Yes.
That's why you can only get one service. And that is not capitalism.
No, it's not.
That's not free market.
That's not a free market. And I think the Earn It Act will actually exacerbate that. It'll make it worse, and it'll make it harder, because it just so happens that a lot of people in the tech industry are leftist, but not all of them. There's a lot of GOP Republican people in big tech.
Elon Musk.
Most of the people who run it are Republican. Bezos. The people who have the money are the ones, the people in power are the ones who are, but so to me, it seems like it's just, you got us we got in trouble, so now we're attacking. That's what it feels like to me. And we're using, it's the whataboutism, right? Well, what about this? Well, what about sexual assault? What about sexual abuse with kids? What about this? Yeah, those are important. But this is also important. And we need to, just like, Black Lives Matter. Well, what about all lives mattering? All lives should matter. Yeah. But in this moment, Black lives should matter, right? So in this moment, child exploitation should not be used as a way to abuse Americans and be able to read and see everything that we do.
Much like the Patriot Act was used.
Yes.
After 9/11.
Yes.
Okay, steering back to the actual text. So that is the first consideration. Now you get to the next consideration, whether or not this social media platform is made available to the public. So they will regulate public social media. But if you pay a subscription to a private social media, they're probably not going to regulate that.
Basically, they're supporting. I mean, isn't Trump's thing like a pay for subscription thing?
Yes, it is.
That sounds a little shady to me.
So what that would mean is the social media platforms out there now, if they want to try and stay like they are, would have to start charging a subscription fee.
Yeah.
But even if they did start a subscription fee, it's only a consideration. They can always come back and say, well, you're so large, the subscription fee doesn't matter. We're still going to regulate you.
Yeah.
Then
I on the surface, it looks good. But when you get deep into it, it's not what you think it is.
Is there any mention of sex trafficking or child porn yet?
No.
And so now you have the next consideration of the social media platform is primarily responsible for hosting, storage, display, retrieval of information on behalf of third parties, including providers of other social media platforms. This is the first consideration that could have a connection to child porn.
But the thing is, a pedophile is a pedophile. They're going to have child pornography in all forms, not just digitally.
Correct. And I will say this. Child porno rings generally have a subscription service.
Gross. That's disgusting. Maybe that's what they need to be going after.
Paid for with Bitcoin.
Gross.
Well, other I can't single out Bitcoin now because there are many more cryptocurrencies.
Cryptocurrency is what it's paid for.
Historically, it was Bitcoin.
Yeah. So it's gross. Anyway.
But
because I mean, if you think about it, we already have laws for child exploitation and child pornography. And we are catching them. We already have those laws in place.
I'm going to tell you, the thought just hit me again, why they're going to pass this. Because most of the people voting on this are over 65 years old.
Yeah.
They don't understand how any of this works. And on the surface, it sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
So just think of your grandma and your great grandma who still have their VCR plugged in and flashing 12 voting on this social media regulation.
Yeah. People who don't use social media are making laws about it.
Right.
And I think that kind of wraps up what this is about, really. I thought we might go into more depth, but no, I mean, we kind of summed it up, really, what it's about. Like, it's social media regulation under the guise of child sexual abuse or child sexual exploitation.
There is one other section if we have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
there's in the Communications Act of 1934, Section 230, and this is you'll find this in Section 5 of this act. This gives liability. This prevents liability of the social media companies currently from anything that they host. They pretty much have a blanket immunity. If someone throws up a child porn picture, you can't go after TikTok or Twitch for it. But this is taking that away.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Which will then make TikTok or Twitter or Twitch or whatever responsible for what all of us says.
Right. And what's going to happen then is something's going to happen. They're going to be fined or sued because now they can be found liable.
They're going to shut down or completely change the platform.
Or go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right.
Or completely change the platform so that it's unusable. Yeah.
Right. And you're going to have to go to someplace like Parler.
Gross.
That's going to not be regulated.
Gross. Because there's not enough people on Parler using Parler.
It's small. It doesn't have the 2 billion users of a Facebook or a TikTok.
You know what? How many active users on Twitter? Twitter has 211 million active users.
Right. How many are on TikTok?
Let's see. Parler, not even remotely close to Twitter. 13 million. Well, in 2021, it's 13 million. I can't find current statistics on how many are on Parler.
Yeah, you probably won't.
And then Facebook.
It's a couple
2.9 billion. Billion.
Yeah.
Almost 3 billion people.
That is approximately half the people on the earth.
Yeah. And that's what they want to regulate. So,
and this.
So what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, you should contact your representatives and let them know you don't want this to go through. We just contacted our representatives recently about crap. What was it yesterday? Anyway, we regularly do that ourselves.
But you got to call them and explain why.
Yes.
If you just call up and say, I'm against this, you're just a check mark.
Write your letters.
Letters go a lot farther than telephone calls.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've heard that from Congress.
Really?
Yeah. And staffers themselves. Taking the time to write a letter.
Even if it's
you're more passionate and are more likely to vote according to it than simply clicking a box and emailing it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I think the thing we did yesterday was send them a letter. Like it
was.
Which was really a neat way. It's a bot that you text and you'll give them your information and then it will mail the letter for you. It was about the postal service. That's it. The post office updates, which we want our representative to support because it will give the post office its much needed help.
I also forgot one further consideration in all this is whether or not the the messages that you send through these things are encrypted.
Yeah.
And they will then regulate the encryption technology.
Because WhatsApp, that will really affect apps like WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is literally used for the encryption portion. Like I had a doctor use it once, which I thought was weird, and I didn't go to her again after that, because I thought that was kind of weird. But I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it could even affect Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, Discord, Slack, like all of the things that you use to communicate with your people, it's going to affect it if it goes through. And it's going to be it is very likely, because of who presented it, that it's going to be abused. And I would say, honestly, that even if it was a leftist that brought this particular thing, even like it needs to be more specific and more targeted for me to support it personally. It's too broad, which makes it way too easy to abuse.
Yeah. There is software that detects adult sites.
Mm-hmm.
You could develop software so you wouldn't have to have people monitoring with their eyes. You could develop some software for porn.
To be like, well,
So
I mean,
so it would get filtered first. Then you could have humans go through that.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can have humans go through millions and millions of posts and text
no.
every day.
Right. And I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening to Learning the Law. If you like this podcast and want to hear more, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share it on your favorite places. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Learning the Law. Ron at Necrokijo, that's NECROKIJO, and me at Phoenix Nymphy. If you have any questions, please tweet, comment, or email us at twolazydogsmedia@gmail.com. This has been a Two Lazy Dogs production.
Hi, everyone.